We've all seen the videos that have been on the news about the crash or segments of the crash. And so when you look at those kinds of things, there's information that may be able to glean out of them. But there's a number of knowns that you have to have in place in order to do a proper analysis. So we've captured sufficient amount of data that we believe that will help us to do that more accurately. And again, it's working in conjunction and hand in hand with the Chattanooga PD. Our motor carrier group, right now as we speak, are in London, Kentucky. They've been up there for the past few days dealing with the motor carrier. Things that we're looking at with the motor carrier is our number one or foremost thing is the safety culture of that carrier. And what safety culture is it's systems that are in place that are adhered to by the carrier to ensure that they are in compliance with the federal regulations, required state regulations, and maintenance upkeeps of their particular vehicles. We're also up there in conjunction with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, who is also on scene conducting what's referred to as a compliance review, where in their process they examine a motor carrier on how they fit into the safety management systems and our application or applicability to the federal regulations. This motor carrier was last rated by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration in 2007 and received a satisfactory safety rating at that particular time. We also look at the drug and alcohol programs that they have in place. Drivers are required, or people that work in safety sensitive positions are required to have a drug and alcohol test before they can be behind the wheel of a commercial motor vehicle. The driver involved in this case began work on Monday, June the 22nd of 2015. This was his first dispatch and first run for this particular company. And after his application was returned, that he had a negative pre-employment drug test, that he was authorized to drive a commercial motor vehicle. On the driver's hours of service and the driver's trip information. On Monday, June the 22nd, the driver drove from London, Kentucky to Horse Cave, Kentucky, the distance of about 18 miles to pick up his load for this accident trip. While there, he encountered some problems and some maintenance issues with his commercial motor vehicle, and it was down for repairs. He was delayed, returned back to London, Kentucky, and on Tuesday, there were additional repairs that were made on the tractor, and he departed for Haines City, Florida, in the early evening hours on Tuesday, June the 23rd. On Wednesday, June the 24th, the driver was involved in a minor crash in Wildwood, Florida. And that was a distance of about 859 miles of travel from the time he was dispatched in Kentucky till the location of the accident scene in Wildwood. In that case, there was involved another vehicle, another commercial motor vehicle. There were repairs that were necessary to his truck, to the accident driver's truck. Those repairs were made, and then he continued to his destination in Haines City, Florida. He dropped off his load at Haines City, Florida, departed Haines City late in the afternoon on Wednesday, and then the crash occurred on Thursday the 25th at about 7:10 p.m. The total distance traveled from Haines City to the accident site was about 580 miles. Our investigators, along with the Chattanooga PD and the Tennessee Highway Patrol, are continuing to verify this information and other activities that may have taken place along this particular route. And if there are any charges or any hours of service issues, then they'll be handled through the Tennessee Highway Patrol or the Chattanooga PD. But we will continue to assist them and work along with them as we go through this process. The human performance side of this particular case. The driver was properly licensed in the state of Kentucky to operate this particular type of vehicle. He began his employment, as I said earlier, on Monday, June the 22nd. And one of the things that we look at closely in the human performance issue is the issues of fatigue. That's just outlaid the route of travel, the distances and all that are involved. And so our human performance group will work in conjunction with our motor carrier group, the FMCSA, and again, the law enforcement agencies to look at the availability of time for rest, what his driving experiences have been and what his training has been, and if he had ample time or he had opportunities to rest. And that process is ongoing at this time. The drug and alcohol is an area that we look at. We look at the drug and alcohol programs that the motor carrier has, where there's a requirement for pre-employment testing, there's a requirement for testing randomly, and there's also a requirement for post-crash testing by the motor carriers. That any time that a carrier is involved, a commercial vehicle driver is involved in a crash, that results in one of the vehicles being towed and the driver's issued a citation, or there's an injury and the driver's issued a citation, or there's a fatality. They are required to have a drug and alcohol test. The drug and alcohol test, in this case, was conducted by the Chattanooga Police Department. The NTSB was able to obtain an additional sample. That sample is being sent away for our analysis as well. One part of our analysis is that in the commercial vehicle and requirements, there are certain drugs that are tested. There are 5 major or identified as Schedule I substances. We have the capability and ability through our facilities of testing for other types of drugs and medications. So that is an area that's still pending for us, but we're in the process of dealing with that. The vehicle involved in the crash, the Tennessee Highway Patrol conducted what's referred to as a Level 1 post-crash inspection with that vehicle. They will deal with the release of their findings. Our investigation and our vehicle inspection is much more intense because we look at the components that are involved, the whole overall operation of the vehicle. So our examination takes a great deal of time, but some of the things that we do are also applicable back to the typical Level 1 inspection. So our inspectors have been working with THP and again with Chattanooga PD in conducting that inspection. We found during the course of our inspection a couple of deficiencies in this commercial motor vehicle involved in this crash. The deficiencies that we found are not contributory to the crash and are not causal to the crash. However, they are of nature that the Tennessee Highway Patrol will address. But they're basically involved, there's a couple that involve brake components, but again, was not contributory in any fashion to this particular crash. We have removed some components from the commercial motor vehicle, one to look at some of their operation if they're operating as they were designed. We've also removed some steering components that may give us some information about steering wheel positions and indications of impact and locations or movement of the vehicle leading up to impact. We have a recorders group on scene. Our recorders group dealt with, again, working with Chattanooga PD with the security videos that were available from the businesses that were in that particular area, and also conducted downloads of the components on the vehicles involved. Everybody, in aviation, we talk about the black box that tells you everything about the operation. Motor vehicles and trucks don't have that. but they have various components that can provide you information, that can provide information about the crash. We looked at downloads from all the vehicles involved, and we're able to obtain information from 8 of the 9 vehicles. That information is still being reviewed. May be helpful for us to determine the position of vehicles or their position at the time of impact as this chain of events took place. Our survival factors group was also involved in those downloads, and that download information will be helpful to them. Our survival factors groups, they look at mechanisms of injuries, survivable space in vehicles, and the deployment of airbags, the activation of seatbelts, all the restraint devices and systems that are in cars. We looked at in our downloads and are continuing our investigation, looking into the airbag deployment of the vehicles. In some of the vehicles we had a deployment. In other vehicles we did not have a deployment. And not that that's indicative of that anything was wrong, but throughout the series of events in the crash, and at the time that sensors are activated at different points of impact, may have not fired as a result of not knowing where the occupants were at that particular moment. So it's also a safety feature as far as the deployment and the operation of the airbags are concerned. We have examined the seatbelts, or I'm sorry, the airbags, because there's a great interest in this country about a number of recalls involving airbags. We have eliminated at this time 3 of the vehicles involved were not equipped with the airbags that are involved in the recall, and we're continuing along with our investigation for the remaining. The accident also involved a hybrid vehicle, the Prius, and hybrid vehicles are equipped with batteries, and the batteries operate at high voltage. And there have been some concerns in the past about these types of vehicles involved in crashes, as they may present a danger if there's a breach or some type of an issue or failure in collisions. So we're taking an extremely hard look about the crash worthiness of the battery system and the components in the Prius, and that's something that we will also address in our investigation. We have been on scene, as I said, since Friday. We'll probably remain on the scene probably through the weekend, and our work should be wrapped up about then on scene. But this is only the beginning of our task. In the week that we've been here, there's been a great deal of information gathered, evidence that's been collected and it's been forwarded. And now we'll go back to our processes, back where we'll consult with our supportive staff. We'll deal with manufacturers to gain additional technical expertise and information on these components that are involved. And these are the things that will continue to go into our report. Typically in an NTSB investigation, because of the follow-up work, the analysis work that we do, the review processes that we have in place to make sure that we get it right, we look at a turnaround or a completion date of about 12 to 14 months for this investigation. With that, that's the factual information and the things that we've been able to cover or uncover at this particular time. As I said, we are continuing to work with, and obviously there will be updates from the Chattanooga PD and the Tennessee Highway Patrol. We will issue a preliminary report in about 10 days that will capture some of the information that I presented here, as well as updated information that we've put together between now and the time that preliminary report is released. And with that, I'm prepared to take a few questions if you have any. Yes,
I wanted to be clear. So the driver only has to get a drug or alcohol test after a crash involving an injury. Did he have a drug or alcohol test after the crash in Florida?
No.
He did not.
He did not.
Was he required to?
Yes, because it was the crash that he was involved in Florida was considered a tow-away crash because he had to have repairs on his vehicle before he could move it, and he was issued a citation in that crash. So he met that criteria of requirement of
Was
post-crash.
that his responsibility to go get that test, or was that the company's responsibility to line that up for him?
It's actually shared between the company and the driver.
You said that there was no indication that there was a problem with the brakes that contributed to the crash. Did the driver deploy the brakes at any point before he impacted these other cars?
The physical evidence that we've looked at right now is subject to change, and so I'd rather not comment on that until we're 100% certain.
How forthcoming is the driver being with you in regards to the accident and what transpired?
We contacted the driver. We interviewed the driver and his passenger yesterday in Kentucky, and they were very cooperative with us.
Just to reiterate, the main factor you're looking at now is fatigue.
Yes, ma'am. That's one of the factors we're looking at. That's correct.
Any idea if there was any cell phone use while driving?
Cell phone. We always look at cell phone usage, and in the cell phone in this particular case, it has been obtained. And again, we're working on the data in that phone directly with the Chattanooga PD.
Just for the sake of clarity, can we get your name spelled?
Yes. Last name is Kotowski. First name is Pete, and last name is spelled Kotowski.
You said that the warnings were clear about the construction site. I just want to be totally clear. So
Yeah.
everything was done according to state and federal law as to the warnings that were supposed to be set up.
Our preliminary investigation is that the signage is appropriate for this particular type of operation.
Do you know how soon those warnings have been put up between then and the crash? Like how much time had transpired between when those signs were set up and when this occurred?
There's a couple things there are signs that have been in place. There are signs that have been installed, and there's also dynamic message signs. I think there's one back at the 10-mile marker in that particular area. There are portable signs, as I said, with the Q vehicles that have arrow boards on them. And basically right now, we are in the process of interviewing folks from the construction company right now.
Okay. Is there any indication that any other vehicles involved in this accident contributed to the crash? Or is the truck being looked at as the sole cause of the...
When we look at a crash, we look at all the components that are involved and the influence of things that are involved. And in this particular case, we have video, and we're very hopeful that we'll be able to gather a lot of detail out of it. As I say, we're in the process of trying to get that done now. And some of the things that you look at is that sometimes the vehicles that are involved in the collision aren't really the cause of collision. There are other influences that other drivers could have that maybe influence the movement of a vehicle that ends up being in a crash. So traffic patterns and those kinds of things from videos we're examining right now to address those issues, or at least make an attempt.
Do you have a working estimate of what the rate of speed was of this truck at the collision point?
We have that. We have some preliminary information on that, and it's based on other information. This truck was not equipped with an electronic control module or an ECM that would typically give you that type of information. So the information that we have right now as it pertains to speed is purely analytical, and we only release factual information at this particular time. Had we had a download, and we do this customarily, information that comes from a download, we do release the speeds, but because our determinations at this phase are early and it's analytical, we're not releasing that information now.
Can you say anything to the driver's conversation with you or your investigators yesterday as to how he tries to explain it?
He was very candid in his interview with us. He was very cooperative. He answered all of our questions. He didn't balk at any of the questions. But one of the things that happens is that sometimes information changes from the time that the initial interview takes place until there's a follow-up interview. And so at the present time, we're doing some comparisons and continuing our investigation to validate or invalidate some of the comments that were made. And I'll just leave it at that.
And he is in Kentucky, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Does he have any sort of limitation or stipulation on his driving privileges right now in light of this accident?
At the present time, no. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is an enforcement agency, and they would deal with any type of sanctions or any type of assessments against him. Okay?
So he can still drive,
At the present time, as we speak, yes, he can.
Do you know if he's driving, if this company has him on any sort of?
To our knowledge, he is not driving for the company at the present time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete.
Can you get any information from CPD about the timing of y'all's criminal investigation? About when you may expect something?
Channel 12 is on their way to complete like